It's the Morning Sports Report with Dan Dudley and Guy Junker. The Morning Sports Report on TribLIVE Radio is brought to you by Cash and Culture, your pop culture and retro gaming headquarters. Visit our 4 stores at Westmoreland Mall, Century 3 Mall, North Huntington, and Bell Vernon, or online at cashandculture.com. Guy, Pirates back to 500, 38-38. Impressive win over the Rays, who are not having a good year, but 8-1. Can't complain with that.
Yeah, you like to see that kind of offense, but I think even more importantly, the start by Volquez. Throws over 100 pitches, goes 8 innings, and they fought their way back to 500 again. They were 500 a weekend ago, promptly lost 3 straight games, and I know the thought crossed my mind, we may not see 500 again the rest of the year. But as I said yesterday when we were talking about this team, they really have hit well since May 1st. Top to bottom, whoever's been in the lineup, who hasn't been in the lineup, they've been a very good hitting team. I'd like to see them produce more runs from those hits, so while they stay near the top in hits and batting average, they're only middle of the pack in runs scored. A lot of that's not playing the small ball, getting the productive outs, the sac flies, and things like that. But I think they have an offense to contend if the pitching can just keep them in it. It looked like the rotation was going to be an issue when 2 guys go on a disabled list. It was not, but the bullpen has kind of become a little bit of a question mark. So, yeah, it was a big win. The schedule's finally even out a little bit, Dan. I mean, April was a brutal schedule. Yep. And the good thing is they're taking advantage of teams like the Cubs and the Rays and some of the Mets and some of the lesser teams at I guess actually that was probably the worst ball they played against the Mets, but they're going to get another chance against them this weekend. Yeah,
it seems like that was kind of the bottom of the season at that point, that awful series against the Mets where they just blunder after blunder after blunder. And
both
then
teams played all of a sudden, terrible. It was crap baseball,
And then all of a sudden they started to play a lot better. Like you've seen the offense, and now adding Gregory Polanco, and now Neil Walker is going to be back in the lineup tonight. So who moves? Who's going to be moving out of the lineup?
I think it's a key week because they have been playing pretty well, and you got to make the right decisions here. I don't think they have much of a choice pitching-wise. Compton is probably going to go down, although Jeff Locke has options left too. So you send one of those guys down. I think Locke's been a little better and certainly been better longer. You like having a lefty. So I imagine Compton goes down, Cole goes back in the rotation in his spot, and then you wait and see on Liriano. The Walker thing's much trickier. Not only do you got to figure out who you cut from the team to make room for him, but where do you place the parts that you then have in the lineup? Now, at least the next 2 games with Tampa, you got a designated hitter. So maybe you start Neil Walker back as a DH to get him some swings without worrying about playing the field. Maybe you want to throw him in there right away to get him back in the middle of things. And Josh Harrison's maybe your DH. But man, he made another great over-the-shoulder catch last night.
Made 2 last night.
No matter where the guy plays, he's getting the job done. It's hard to take him out of the lineup at all. But is it Snyder? Is it Barmas? It might be Tabata if they didn't have so much money invested in him. It's going to be an interesting roster move to say the least, and how they insert the more Neil Walker and use him, I think, than the pitching, because I think the pitching's kind of a done deal.
Well, Pedro Alvarez, he goes yard last night, so he gets out of his little bit of a slump. But the funny thing about Pedro this month, he's hitting .290. He's actually, it's the field, it's the errors that I think most people are kind of annoyed with Pedro about, and I guess the way he acts on the field and everything.
Well, it's the errors, and you know what else?
He's having a good month.
Yeah, I think it's the lack of production at the key times. I know it was a big hit last night, but they already had a lead. But we've seen, it comes up in the 7th inning against the Reds, or 6th, whatever inning it was, and they're getting hammered, and he hits a double. When he came up earlier in the game with 2 men on and the game's still in the balance, he strikes out. I think that's what bothers you about him. Yeah. I mean, hitting .290 is one thing. I'd take .250 if he's getting key hits. So I just think that but maybe he does come out of it a little bit. We've seen him get really hot and hit a lot of home runs in a short period of time. He hasn't really had one of those hot spells yet this year. I think he's adjusted his swing. I think the shift has caused him to do that. Good for him. He's hit more the opposite way, but a little more of that slapping, I think, has taken away some of his power.
Pirates back to 500. Dan Dudley, Guy Junker. You're listening to the Morning Sports Report on TribLIVE Radio, brought to you by Cash and Culture, your pop culture and retro gaming headquarters. Visit our 4 stores at Westmoreland Mall, Century 3 Mall, North Huntington, and Bell Vernon, or online at cashandculture.com.